Are you guys excited for another video that doesn't feature my face? Apparently, responding to the other video that I did recently where you didn't see much of my face, it seems like you guys really like that. Message received, loud and clear. I'm hideous, and I get it, but that's cool. If anyone is curious, I am coloring from this Geo Art Animals coloring book. It's probably going to be a rambly video, which is why I did not want to show my face, because there's just going to be a lot of talking and very little editing. But essentially, I wanted to talk about my experience getting into publishing and moving to the city and kind of answering any questions that you guys might have had. I started working at a publishing company in August, and before that I was studying at NYU for their Summer Publishing Institute, which is from late May to early July. And before that, I was living in Pittsburgh, which is where I worked for about 6 years, and I went to school there as well. But I worked in a bookstore part-time and then full-time. Basically, working at this store, I was able to work with books, and I worked kind of next to publishers, not really alongside them, but I was able to look at catalogs and get a feel of what was being released or would be released later that year. And I kind of grew to realize that I was interested in what went on at publishing companies and the sorts of decisions that went into putting books out there and publishing, different books every year. That was happening inside my head. And then also I had a friend who did the program at NYU that I would end up doing later that year or the next year. But basically he did this program and he really liked it, and he told me how great of a chance it was to meet people in the industry living in New York City, and also to kind of figure out better like what you want to do and that sort of thing. Because the true story and the sad story is that I did not major in publishing at school. I majored in business, and kind of like I don't know even what you'd call it, but one of those general majors that a lot of people major in because they have no idea what they want to do with their lives. That's what I did because I didn't know what I want to do. Not that I do right now, but back then I had even less of an idea where I was going in life. So I decided to major in business, and it was not something that I advise other people to do. Obviously, you should try to figure out what your passion is and pursue it. But for me, I had been interested in reading and writing, but it had always been a hobby, and I never ever considered it to be something that I could pursue professionally, which seems silly, obviously, from where I am today and knowing what I know now. But back then, I just didn't know anything about publishing, and books were just a thing that I'd read and consumed outside of school, but didn't really see myself working at a company like that. Knowing what I know about publishing, or knowing what I knew then, which was very little, I didn't know what my chances were of actually getting a job in publishing, because I don't have experience with English, I don't have experience with books or design or anything that goes into books or publishing them, so I was just kind of at a loss. But then, like I said, I had this friend tell me about the program at NYU and how he had done it, and he kind of had a similar experience. He did not major in English or anything close to English in college, so he told me how the program was a really great way to kind of balance out your weaknesses and show that you are interested in learning more about the industry. One of the reasons I loved doing this program at NYU is because it was a chance for me to get used to the city and to kind of figure out if I could even survive in New York, because New York is one of the toughest cities to live in, or so they say. Not that I've lived in that many, but one thing you hear over and over again is how if you're from a smaller city, or if you're from, even a small town, there are a lot of adjustments that you need to make when it comes to living in New York. And for me, there were definitely a lot of adjustments, but like I said, I lived in Pittsburgh, so I felt like I had enough of an experience living in a city, even though it's a smaller one, but I figured I had a pretty good idea. But one thing I loved about doing this program is that it gave me the chance to kind of test out New York and figure out if it was a place that I could live in and be happy in, or at least see myself living in. So that's why I loved doing the program, is because you kind of got this chance to try it on before you bought it. So like I said, the program was about 2 months, and it's a really great chance to learn more about the publishing industry. I didn't know anything about it going into it, really. I knew what I know from Booktube, which is obviously a decent amount. I know probably more the consumer side and the reviewer side of the publishing industry and how that fits into it. But the course is definitely a great way to learn more about the sort of thought that goes into publishing and trends in the industry, and you get to meet a lot of different people from the industry. The thing I love about the NYU program, and I think there's also one at Columbia that's similar, in that they pull people from various publishing companies in New York City, and that's honestly one of the best ways to get a feel for what the industry is going to be like, is to meet people that are currently doing the sorts of things that you aspire to do. So those are all good reasons to do the program. If you're interested in doing it, I can tell you more about it. This is not a video to sell you on this publishing program. I don't care if you do it. And the other caveat is there are multiple ways to get into publishing. You do not have to do the publishing program to get into publishing in New York City. So I am in no way trying to sell anyone on this program, or even say that you have to spend the money on this program to get into publishing, because that's not true at all. But for me, and for the reasons I talked about, I felt like it was the best route because I did not have any practical experience in publishing, and I hadn't lived in New York City before. I didn't have any connections there, so I figured it was the best way to get those connections and to get the experience. And in hindsight, it was, and I'm really happy that I did it. Flash forward to the end of my time at NYU, and a lot of my friends, well, pretty much everyone who did the program is scrambling to get a job. And one good thing about this program is that it sets you up with a job fair towards the end of the program where you get to meet people and network with HR people at some of the big publishers in New York City. So that was a really great way to network and kind of see what job opportunities were out there. And I was happy about that at the time, but it turns out that nothing really panned out from the job fair, and I didn't get the job that I currently have from the job fair. So going into it, I was excited, but then as more and more of my friends were getting jobs and I was just kind of feeling left behind, and there's only about a few weeks of time that I'm talking about here when the program ended and before I was hired somewhere else, but at the time it felt like eons, and I was like, what do I do now? I'm jobless, I am not in school anymore, and I don't know what to do with my life. I read about a job ad on some website, I think it was mediabistro.com, and there was an opening at the company where I work right now, and I hadn't really heard of it because it is a smaller publisher, and I was focusing primarily at that point on the larger ones, but I said, what the heck, why not? And I gave it a shot, and I interviewed for this position, and it turns out that I got it. So that was back in August, and this has been my first job in publishing, and it's been really good so far. I've got a lot of questions about what it is to work in publishing and what the reality of it is, and how my expectations might be different than the reality of it. To be honest, I feel like I still really don't have a good grip on what publishing is because I do only have the experience of working at this one company. So I know that's kind of a cop-out, but I feel like I can't make blanket statements about publishing because the thing about publishing is that the culture is very, very different at any of the publishers that you work at. And they say this time and again, but from the outside it might seem like you're choosing the same company no matter where you go because, hey, they all publish books. But that's really not true at all. And once you meet people who work at these companies and you talk to them, you'll figure out what works best for you and hopefully get a better idea of where you will be happy and also where your skills can be used. So those are all things to consider. And I chose to work at a small company like this because like I said, previous to that, I was working at a small bookstore in Pittsburgh, and I didn't really feel like I wanted to move from that and just work at a huge company because that would have just been overwhelming, and a lot of the publishers here are humongous. So I figured working for a small publisher here in the city was the best idea because I didn't want to overwhelm myself with all the change of moving to a new city and having to deal with a new industry and a new position and all that stuff. So decided to go small, and I have to say that for the most part, it's worked out really well. I get to feel close to the people I'm working with. I know in bigger companies, it can kind of be tough to actually get to know people and make friends at work because there are so many people that you work with. But here, it's a smaller office. There are, I think, about 20 of us here, and when I started, there were even fewer people working here. So it was really easy to get to know people and to feel like I was part of a family and part of a close-knit group, which is important to me when I'm working somewhere, because I just feel, for me, it's like one of the deal breakers of whether or not I accept a job is trying to figure out how I'm going to feel working at that place, if that makes sense, because I'm an emotional person, I guess. But basically that's the story of how I moved to New York, and I feel like I might be glossing over some things, and there were some questions that I got on Twitter that I want to try to answer here if I can. So generally the questions that I get about moving to New York are, one, how did you do it? Why'd you do it? Which I feel like I've answered in the first part of this video. I'm not gonna get to any of this owl. Do you see how slowly I'm coloring? It's just gonna be mostly white. He's a snowy owl, that's okay. But basically, I moved to New York to work in publishing, and if you wanna work in publishing, they say this is the place to do it, and this is the place you need to be because a lot of the big companies are here. I wouldn't say that you need to be here. Like, if you do not see yourself working and living in New York City, then try to find something else. And there are other opportunities. I don't know of that many, but I do know, for example, that Quirk Publishing, which does the Pride, Prejudice, Zombie book and everything in that line and a bunch of other stuff that I don't know about, they, I believe, are based in Philadelphia, which is close to New York and pretty big, but also like not as big and as daunting as New York. So if that's something that's holding you up and keeping you from pursuing a career here or in publishing, then definitely look into other stuff and try to talk to people. Anyone that you know who works in publishing can become a resource. When I was looking for a job in publishing, I felt like I didn't know anyone, and that's, like I said, why I did the program. You will probably end up realizing that you know more people who work in publishing than you thought you did, especially if you're involved in internet book communities, if you're either on Bookstagram or Booktube or Book Twitter or Book Tumblr or anything. There are people around you, talking to you, looking at you. I know that sounds creepy. I'm sure there are more people like me out there on Booktube who work in publishing and are more than happy to answer your questions. The only one that I can think of off the top of my head is Sana from Books and Quills, but she also works in publishing over in the UK, and I think Lena Norms also does. So those are two options. If you want people to talk to you about the UK side of things, then they can probably do that. I'm also happy to answer questions that you might have. If you have thoughts about working in publishing, concerns, anything, I don't know. If you're excited about it, you can just drop me a comment on any video. It doesn't have to be this one. If you're just watching another video and you get an idea for a question, then sure, comment and I'll definitely let you know what I know, which isn't very much because, like I said, I haven't even worked in publishing for a full year. It's been like 8 months at this point, which is a decent length of time, but still, I'm very new to this and I will help you as best I can, or maybe even direct you to people that I know who can answer your question. Not that I know tons of people, but I'll do what I can to help, for sure. But moving on into other aspects of things people wanted to know about my experience in publishing, somebody asked me what the best and worst things about working in publishing are, which are kind of, like I said, tough questions to answer because it hasn't been that long and I've only worked at one company. So she also asked part 2 of that question, which is something that's unexpected. And that is easy because going into publishing, I figured you are entering a room, you're entering an industry where there are just buckets and buckets of book nerds who are probably not going to want to talk to people because they're very antisocial. Because, hey, I'm antisocial, and I can say that about people, that it's kind of expected and it's kind of the stereotype in the book communities that everyone would rather be home reading than socializing, which is sometimes true. Don't get me wrong, I love that too. But also, there is so much networking in the publishing industry. I think that's true of anything in New York City and probably true of the adult world in general. Not that I'm that great at being an adult. You are going to benefit from networking the most. That is going to help you out. You're going to be able to meet people and, like I said, talk to people and get their perspective on things. But also, many times, you will know people who can connect you to HR people at companies, people that can put your resume forward, because really the best way to get your resume in front of people who are hiring is to talk to people who work at the company and ask them if they would be comfortable submitting your resume for you. Because if you do it online, the chances of people seeing it are they're just, come on. Like, consider the size of the industry and how badly everyone wants to work in it. It's just not likely that people are going to look at your resume. And I know that's terrifying. And believe me, I just went through this process in August. So I know what it feels like to think about people throwing your resume in the trash or deleting your emails, frantically asking about jobs. because I was there, but that's just the nature of hiring, I feel like. So, like I said, the best way to get your resume in front of people is to try to talk to people and get to know who works where, and hopefully work your networks and your connections better and get a job. So that's my job advice, and I really didn't intend this to be a job advice video, but it's kind of an everything video. It's a life video. So that's kind of like me in publishing and my perspective on publishing and what I know so far. I did also get asked a question about what it's like to work in publishing and also have a Booktube channel and be a book reviewer, because I think there's some concern there that, not concern, but it's kind of a confusing line to tread sometimes, where you don't know how honest you can be and how open you can be, because you don't want to hurt anyone's feelings and burn bridges, because publishing is a very tight-knit community. From my perspective, that has never and probably will never be a problem, because I feel like I'm a pretty honest reviewer, but I feel like I'm also a pretty tactful reviewer, and I try not to say anything that I would regret saying or wouldn't want people to hear, especially if you're publishing anything on the internet. That's just kind of a rule to live by, don't you think? So for me, that wasn't really a main concern, but I think kind of related to that, the main reason why I wasn't doing videos all last summer and spring and fall is because I didn't really have a place to film, and that's kind of the only reason why I wasn't filming, which seems kind of dumb in retrospect, but it's not because I didn't know how I could review books and also work in the industry. It's nothing like that. I just honestly did not have a place to film videos where I was secluded and felt comfortable. So that's why I didn't film videos, but also, like I said, it's just never really been a concern of mine that people who work in publishing would be offended by my content. And in fact, on the flip side of that, and this is a great place to mention it, if you are a booktuber, or if you have a Bookstagram account, or if you have a book blog, if you have anything out there that people can look at on the internet, that is a huge selling point for people. People that are hiring. Like, that is, I don't know quite what percentage of the reason why I got hired, but that is a huge percentage of the reason I got hired, because I put my Booktube channel on my resume. It was something that I've been working on for a while, obviously, and it's something I put a lot of time and energy into. So I felt completely comfortable putting it there, and it's something that I'm proud of. And then in the interview, my now boss, she brought it up and she said, you know what, part of the reason I brought you in here is because I watched your Booktube channel and I was really impressed by the content and what I saw there. And that's something that I'm sure you'll hear across the board, not just in publishing, but in industries in general. Video content is so huge right now, and it's something that I heard while we were doing the program at NYU. They talked a lot about things like Facebook video and Instagram stories, and basically live streaming video is the future of social media. So they're looking for people who know how to do that sort of thing, and I feel like it really sets you apart from the crowd if you put that on your resume. So basically, I think I've answered all the questions that people have asked me. I've given you kind of the basic scoop on what living in New York is like, and I've also colored in a bit more since you last saw me in this video. I edited out some kind of like boring me talking about the apartment hunting process stuff, because that's not that interesting, and I can acknowledge that. Some parts of my life are boring, so I won't subject you to that sort of thing. But like I've said previously many times in this video, is that if you have any questions about moving to New York or getting a job in publishing, please reach out to me, because I'd love to help you. And apparently I've talked so much that I'm losing my voice. So that is a signal for me to end this video and to move on with my life. But this was fun. I will definitely try to do another coloring Q&A type vid in the future. I think it's better than me just talking at a camera. And I also feel like I probably addressed things in more depth than I normally would in one of my kind of like 5 or 6 minute edited videos. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. This is what I've done so far. It's pretty cute. Obviously coloring takes a long time, which I didn't know because I don't really color that often, so might be, but this looks nice, and we'll just consider this successful. So in the comment section below, let me know if you have any questions, and I will respond to them, and if necessary, provide more info, connect you with the right people, do what I can to help you achieve your life dreams, because that's the goal. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to see more coloring from me in the future, Maybe time-lapse drawing, because obviously this was just me rambling and talking a lot, which probably isn't that fun to listen to, is it? Either way, I hope you guys liked it. I will talk to you all very soon. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day. Bye.